He also endured 8 playoff losses, including some nail-biters to the Chiefs over the past few years. There are now 8 teams without a head coach. Over the weekend, Giants finally came to contract terms with John Harbaugh, while the Falcons, with new president of football operations Matt Ryan, her former colleague, had hired former Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski on Sunday. Back here with Charles Davis, and we also have Rand Carthon, where we're targeting 5 head coaching candidates for this opening here. 2 from Charles, 2 from Rand, and our producers actually tasked me with one of the choices, which we'll get to the end. We're not saving the best for last. I'm just going to go last because I defer to both of you guys. So, Charles, since we have you in-house, I'll have you go first here. Mike McCarthy here. What do you see as a potential fit in Buffalo? Yeah,
what's interesting about it is you're hearing a lot of smoke about Pittsburgh with Mike. Mike's a Pittsburgh guy trying to get things right. And one thing we know the Steelers have always loved is continuity, right? A guy like Mike McCarthy can help do that after Mike Tomlin's exit. Plus, you've got to figure out what you're doing offensively in Pittsburgh, because that is really holding them back in a big way. They couldn't move the ball at all against Houston in the playoffs, but that wasn't a one-game problem. They've had issues all season long, having consistency, but being an offensive team. Plus, they've got to figure out who's going to play quarterback for them going forward. So that's not just a Mike McCarthy issue. If indeed he were to be the head coach, it would be Omar Khan as the general manager and the rest of that organization. What are they going to do at the quarterback position? Because every year, it's a one-year rental, it feels like. So who's going to be that person to take them forward? But Mike McCarthy can help you build an offense. That's something Pittsburgh sorely needs.
So that's something that Pittsburgh was sorely about. What about Buffalo if he's paired up with Josh Allen, Charles? What would you think Mike McCarthy would be like in Western New York?
I think he'd be terrific there, because you've got to come in now. Remember, this is a Buffalo team that has a lot of veterans on the team. So they're going to be saying, okay, hold a second. We just lost our head coach on a very, very tough ball game in overtime. We've been so close so many times. We have a rapport there. He runs our defense. Who's going to step into the room and be able to do that? Mike McCarthy has that veteran presence, has a Super Bowl ring, can work with Josh Allen, but I think he can work with the veterans of the whole unit as well.
Given that Super Bowl ring, Mike McCarthy will be a popular target for multiple teams here. Rand, how was Klint Kubiak and what he's done in the Pacific Northwest be potentially a fit here for the Bills, you think?
I just think his history as an offensive coordinator and the scheme in which he comes from, it will be great for a guy like Josh Allen. The way they call this offense, being able to have the nakeds and the boots and some of the quarterback design runs, I think will really help Josh Allen out and be able. And you don't necessarily need high-end receivers in this scheme. You just need guys that have run after the catch ability, and I think Buffalo has that. Now, here's where I want to dot connect a little bit, Tommy T. I was recently watching this John Elway doc, and it kind of chronicled his career. And John Elway, as a young quarterback, he was lauded as one of the greatest quarterbacks prospects to ever come out at that time. Much in the way a lot of people see Josh Allen right now. Their careers to date have been very similar. John Elway did have a Super Bowl appearance by this time, but both had been MVPs and not much success throughout the playoffs. And what happened when they brought in Mike Shanahan, you saw John Elway's career really take off. And what tree does Klint Kubiak comes from? He comes from that Shanahan-Kubiak system, which I think would really help Josh Allen. So Klint Kubiak, a young offensive mind that I think this is the direction I truly believe that the Buffalo Bills will go towards, because, and I'll say the reason why I think they're going to stick with the offensive side of the ball, they will stick with young. Charles had mentioned the continuity and what Pittsburgh really covets, right? So if you hire another defensive-minded head coach like McDermott was, you run the risk of having a high-quality young offensive coordinator call plays, be able to create enough recognition behind their name to get a potential head coaching job and then move on, which now kind of disrupts that continuity. But if you have an offensive-minded coach who will lean towards calling the plays, at least you know if people leave, the system will stay the same for Josh Allen in that offense.
I can vouch for that Elway doc, by the way. It's very good, done well, kind of chronicles, makes you remember about that 80s version of John Elway, which had those Super Bowl appearances and losses.
And he could hit the curveball.
And he could hit the curveball. Talk about two-way stars. He was certainly one of them.
He was all of that.
Doing very well for himself out at Stanford in the farm before going pro, and we all know how that certainly worked out. Charles, you heard Rand talk about if the Bills deviate from an offensive-minded head coach and stick with something that they know in Sean McDermott. How would Lou Anarumo potentially fit out there in Buffalo?
Yeah, that would go obviously against what Rand is talking about because of that continuity. But I think you need an adult in the room. And one thing about Lou Anarumo, every time you look up, hey, are the numbers right? Is this right? He commands a room, and people like playing for this guy. Can you figure out the offensive side? I think you certainly can. But I go back to what Buffalo has on their football team. They got a lot of veteran guys who've been so close and haven't gotten there. They're going to need to seize right onto that person who walks into the room. The next person who steps in there and says, hey, I'm going to get you to the next step, they've got to believe in that person right away. I've been around Lou Anarumo for a long time now. I've often thought he's a guy that when we talk about picking head coaches, we always hear, is he an offensive guy? Is he a defensive guy? Does he have the acumen? Is he the hot guy? How about the person who commands the room, commands respect immediately, and has people wanting to play for him? To me, that's Lou Anarumo. Yes, you have to figure out the offense. You have to do all the things that Rand pointed out could be a con to it. But I'm all about that person who leads a ball club. Lou Anarumo fits the bill for me.
Okay.
No pun intended either.
Right, I was going to say, you got it there from Charles. Rand, you've got up next probably the least known name among the candidates that we'll talk about here. Who is it, and why have you highlighted him here today?
So, Tommy T, as I was going through this list and going, there's a lot of names that we've talked about, a lot of recycled names because this cycle has so many damn jobs open that you hear just about every candidate known to man. But this young man, and when I say young man, he's a young man. He's 30 years old. I'm talking about Grant Gudinski, the offensive coordinator for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He came into this cycle as a virtual unknown, but he has made he's made a lot of people catch his attention in terms of the way he's interviewed, to the point where he's getting a second interview with the Cleveland Browns. He's really impressed them so far, so he's getting a second interview. But you look at his background. Now, he's never fully coordinated an offense, which this will allow him to do so. But he's helped with the development of Sam Darnold in Minnesota a couple years ago. He's helped with the transition of Trevor Lawrence. And he's another good, bright, young offensive mind. And the thing that I like the most about him is that he's coming from under Liam Cohen. And we've seen what Liam Cohen has been able to do again with Trevor Lawrence, what he's done with Baker Mayfield. And it's kind of following in that same line of Liam Cohen, of the Dave Canales, guys that have come in and helped develop and take these quarterbacks that people had started to get down on a little bit, help take their game to the next level. And the other thing I want to throw in, there's a commonality between both of the guys, other than them being offensive-minded head coaches. Both of these guys are first-time head coaches. And we've seen GM Brandon Beane get promoted to the president of football operations job, where it's 100% Brandon Beane's operation now. And so from a GM perspective, when you're picking these players, you want to have the ability to play young players. You want to have the ability to develop young players. And there tends to be sometimes with the veteran coach a little bit of pushback in terms of getting these young guys ready. Whereas these young offensive-minded coaches, or these young coaches in general, they have so much to focus on in terms of them being first-time head coaches. They give you a little bit more leeway, and they're more open to playing these young guys. So I think Buffalo, whether it's an offensive coach or a defensive coach, I think you tend to see them stick to a younger, probably more first-time head coach. And also, McDermott's deal still runs through 2027. So you still have to make up some of that because you're still going to be paying him for the 26 and 27 seasons.
Interesting thoughts from both of you guys. So, and Bills, by the way, saw firsthand, of course, in that wild card round against Jacksonville about Grant Gudinski. My selection has twofold here. So I'm going to give you guys my selection. Then, Charles, you're going to give your reaction. And then, Rand, I'm going to give you a different front office perspective to said candidate. And it is Mike Tomlin. You mentioned someone like Mike McCarthy in the situation in Pittsburgh. I think the Bills are in win-now mode. And Mike Tomlin, what's the one thing he hasn't had since Ben Roethlisberger and no playoff win since 2017? Quarterback. He's got Josh Allen. So, Charles, first and foremost here, what would you think about a potential Mike Tomlin-Buffalo Bills marriage?
Well, Mike Tomlin fits everywhere, right? Absolutely. I'm not saying that to be facetious at all, but I like where you're going with this. If Mike Tomlin were to be interested, that seems to not be the case, but let's just go ahead and play the game where, hold it, did you say I get to coach Josh Allen? That might get his attention at that point, and he gets a chance to come up there. Win now group. Rand has talked about having these young coaches come in because paired with the GM, you work the roster better. Right now, I don't know if Buffalo's is worried about that, Rand. I think they're much more worried about, can we make that next step? This is where Mike T really works for them, coming right in, immediately has the respect because, let's face it, every year when they do that poll, and you've seen it, Rand, hey, if you can't play for your coach, who do you want to play for in the league? Who wins the poll in a runaway every year? Mike Tomlin. that would be an outstanding move if Buffalo were to get it. Can't wait to see what the compensation is, because there would have to be a sign and trade, Tommy, to see how it all works out.
I'm glad you brought it up, because that was my question to Rand along that same vein. You know, we had Amy Trask on last week, former Raiders CEO, and she believed that the Steelers were going to be okay with giving up Mike Tomlin for less than perhaps market value, that they were not going to hold the other potential team at ransom to try to get something back. Rand, what would you think if Tomlin and Buffalo were to get together, that would be the case, that Buffalo would not have to maybe give up a king's ransom to get their head coach?
Yeah, I don't think they would have to, because I think this is just where Mike Tomlin and the Steelers organization are at this point. And right now, let's be honest, they have bigger fish to fry, because they got to find their next head coach, their fourth head coach since, 1960s, let's just say. And so they're more locked in to that, because honestly, when was it's 19 years since the Steelers organization has had to hire a head coach. So they have to familiarize themselves with this candidate pool, so to speak. But I agree with CD 100%. I think, Tommy T, there's no chance that this happens. I think Mike Tomlin will take the year off. I saw a clip here recently where he was at his daughter's gymnastics meet down at the University of Georgia. I think he's going to enjoy his time and just stay away from the game. But then the other part I want to tie in, because if I'm not mistaken, CD, please correct me if I'm wrong, but Mike Tomlin and Sean McDermott, I think they played together in college at William & Mary.
They're both William & Mary Hall of Famers. Mike was a wide receiver. Sean was a safety. So they overlapped. I think Mike might have him by a couple of years, but they did overlap during their time at William & Mary. You're correct.
And so for that, Tommy T, I think Mike will have a different level of insight into the Buffalo Bills building because of the nature of the relationship. And I think if Mike Tomlin was to coach this year, I think it would be something that would absolutely have to blow him away. And I just don't know if that exists right now.
Okay. There has been, from what I've heard, too, that Mike Tomlin would take a break from this coaching cycle. So it'll be interesting to see if indeed it plays out that way, and however it lands for both the Bills and
Heck,
Mike T.
he's going to come and sit in my seat before long.
Well,
the negotiations are going right now. Whose seat is he going to take? Coach T, come on. But just let me have a little bit more time here. That's all I'm asking. Can I just get a little bit more time?
Great stuff from Charles and Rand. Your seat is safe with me, my friend.